Chapter 24. The two kids were waiting for the bus at the entrance of the hospital. There were too many people on the two buses in front of them, so Zhao Yuan decided to wait for a bus with fewer people. There were many buses from the hospital to Tsinghua University's East Gate, so there was no need to squeeze with so many people. At this time there were many people on the buses. Tsinghua City was very crowded and there were no subways, so there were always a lot of people at this time of the day. Zhao Yuan was very quiet today. If it was in the past, he would kick a tree next to him, pick at the advertisements on the telephone pole, or talk to the people next to him while waiting for the bus. But now Zhao Yuan just stood there quietly with Gu Yuzi, who was a second-year student. Occasionally he would whisper to Gu Yuzi and wait for the next bus because the buses were too full. Jing Tan stayed inside Zhao Yuan's bag. There was a small gap in the zipper of the bag that allowed Jing Tan to poke her head out. She could breathe without suffocating inside the bag. But no matter what, it was uncomfortable to stay in the bag. Jing Tan wanted to poke his head out, but there were too many people. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Jing Tan shrank into the bag. Zhao Yuan's bag smelled like tea eggs. He probably went to the cafeteria in the morning to buy a few tea eggs to carry so that he wouldn't be hungry after class. After waiting for about 15 minutes, a bus with fewer people finally arrived. Zhao Yuan held Gu Yuzi's hand and got on the bus. Coincidentally, someone got off the bus and gave up his seat. Zhao Yuan thanked him and sat down with Gu Yuzi. He put Jing Tan's bag on his lap. It was only 2 stops to the back gate of Tsinghua University, but it was 2 more stops to the gate of the East Gate. It was best to be able to sit. Jing Tan felt a little stuffy in the bag, so he put his nose in the zipper and breathed in the air. The bus stopped and went. Sometimes it was because it was at a stop and sometimes it was because it was at a traffic light. Jing Tan felt a little sleepy. However, not long after, Jing Tan felt a sharp pain in his beard. Looking through the gap in the zipper, he saw a mother and a child sitting in front. The child was being carried and was facing the person sitting behind. The child probably saw Jing Tan's black nose and a few strands of beard peeking out from the zipper, so he reached out and pulled at his beard. After feeling the pain, Jing Tan shrank inwards and pulled his beard back into his school bag. Cat fur. The kid wasn't fluent in speaking yet. Seeing the strands of cat's whiskers that he had just grabbed retract into his school bag, he pointed at Zhao Yuan's school bag and shouted. Zhao Yuan and Gu Yuzi, who were in a daze, came back to their senses. They did not know what had just happened. They only saw the child pointing at the bag. They thought that they had been discovered and were a little nervous. Although there were no signs on the bus that said pets were not allowed, most people were against bringing pets on the bus. Fortunately, no one else had noticed Jing Tan's beard. The lighting in the bus was not good and people who had just gotten off work were resting, so no one had noticed. The child's mother also thought that her child had seen a black cat hanging on someone else's school bag, so she smiled and comforted him. After arriving at the Dongyuan bus stop, the 2 children quickly got off the bus, afraid that they would be discovered. After all, they were children and were not as thick-skinned as adults. After entering the East Gate, Jing Tan jumped out of his school bag and breathed in the fresh air. His whole body felt much more relaxed. At this time the sky was already dark and the street lights were on. He could vaguely hear the ending song of the program on the school radio. Gusts of wind blew and the rustling of leaves could be heard. There were also sounds of leaves falling. Jing Tan shivered. He ran a few steps and climbed up a tree. After sliding down, he felt that his body was warmer. Seeing Jing Tan like this, Zhao Yuan and Gu Yuzi, who had been in a heavy mood, also felt a little relieved. There were people walking around and people driving home after work. It was not very quiet. They could also hear the barking of dogs in the Dongyuan bus stop. After arriving at the front of the building, Zhao Yuan swiped the access card and Jing Tan ran in first. The building of the Dongyuan bus stop was older and did not have voice-activated lights. The people who lived here were used to it. The lights on the lower 3 floors were all on, but the 4th and 5th floors were dark. The parrot's home on the 4th floor was empty, probably on a business trip again. On the 5th floor, Zhou Xian rarely came downstairs, so no one turned on the lights. Jing Tan went up to turn on the lights so that the 2 children would not bump into the staircase. For other people it was dark in the corridor without lights, but for Jing Tan it was nothing. Or rather, for a cat, this kind of darkness was nothing. It jumped up and turned on the light switch for the 4th floor, and then went up to turn on the light switch for the 5th floor. After turning on the lights, Jing Tan ran downstairs. The 2 children had just reached the 2nd floor. When they reached the fourth floor, the two children finally knew why their cat had run up in advance. Before they entered the building, they did not see the lights on in the corridor between the fourth and fifth floors. Black charcoal is so smart. Zhao Yuan laughed. This was the first time he had laughed since he found out that Jiao Ma was in trouble. Yes. Gu Yuzi was as quiet as always. Jing Tan was depressed. What was there to praise about this kind of thing? But Dad said that a cat that is too smart will attract attention. There are some things that we don't need to let outsiders know. So just talk about what happened just now at home. Don't tell anyone, Jiao Yuan said. I know. Gu Yuzi nodded. She never talked about it. She once saw a child in her class bring a Barbie doll to school every day to show off. Not long after, the Barbie doll was found missing. When it was found, the doll had been stepped on and thrown into the trash can. It was said that people were jealous of it. Their cat picking them up from school every day was already very eye-catching. There was no need to add more things. This should be similar, so they could not talk about it. After returning home, Jiao Yuan called Jiao Pa to tell him that he and his sister had returned home safely. Before he finished the call, Huang's owner, who was called Aunt Ling by Jiao Yuan, came over with a bag of cake and milk. She was afraid that the two children would be hungry. They could be used for breakfast the next morning. Because there were relatives' children at home, Auntie Ling couldn't stay here. Jiao Yuan and the other two children also insisted on staying at home. Auntie Ling boiled the bathwater and waited for the two children to bathe and go to bed before leaving. Jing Tan lay next to Gu Yuzi. After she fell asleep, he ran to Jiao Yuan's room to check. The little brat was still awake. Jing Tan stayed by his side for a while. After making sure that he was asleep, Jing Tan went to the balcony. When he couldn't sleep at night, Jing Tan liked to stay on the balcony to get some fresh air. This kind of environment was very suitable for thinking about life. No, it should be thinking about this stupid cat life. As the night deepened, the lights in the family compound gradually went out. The surroundings also gradually quieted down. There was no noise from the TV or people talking. Next door, Chu Xiangyang's house was still lit. He would not go to bed until 1 or 2 in the morning. Tonight, Jing Tan did not feel sleepy at all. He just sat on the balcony and listened to the movements in the two children's room. What made Jing Tan feel relieved was that the two children were sleeping well. At least they did not have any nightmares. Looking down from the 5th floor, the orange lights on the side of the road in the courtyard were particularly eye-catching. Looking further into the distance, there were many orange lights flickering in the swaying trees. After the wind calmed down, the flickering lights in the trees also stopped. Most of the street lights in the school were orange. Places with such orange lights had a driveway. It was said that orange street lights were the safest type of light. Because the orange light had a long wavelength, it could be seen from far away. Under the orange light, the cars driving in front could also be seen clearly. At the same time, it was also softer. It made people's eyes feel comfortable, and it also made the driver's eyes less tired. This way the journey would be safe. Jing Tan yawned. It was really late. If he stayed for a few more hours, there would probably be people doing morning exercises. Even Chu Xiangyang next door would be asleep. Jing Tan turned around and prepared to go back to the living room to sleep on the sofa. He could also take care of the two children in the living room. Just as Jing Tan raised his foot, he heard a muffled knocking sound coming from downstairs. Jing Tan's footsteps paused. This sound came from the wind chime hanging on the balcony of Depang's bedroom on the 1st floor. At first glance, it looked like a normal wind chime. To an outsider, if there was anything special about it, it would be that the wind chime was hung with a wooden sign and not a metal or shell ornament that made a crisp sound. Jing Tan did not pay attention to it before. But once, when Depang's homework was checked by Celestine's old superior in military uniform, he found out the function of the wind chime. It was a warning. As long as there was no strong wind, the wind chime would not ring. It would only ring when the hanging wooden signs were knocked, and the sound of each wooden sign was different. Jing Tan heard the sound of the wooden sign and looked downstairs. With this look, Jing Tan found 2 rats. Although the 2 people were hiding in the shadows, they could not hide from Jing Tan's eyes. Even if he could not see their faces clearly, he could still capture the 2 figures. At the end of September, there was a theft in the East Family District. Because of this, there were 2 more dogs in the courtyard. After that, there were no more thefts in the East Family District. Looking at the cooperation and behavior of these 2 people, it did not seem like it was the first time at all. They seemed to be very familiar with the layout of the old building in the family district. They also had some understanding of the residents. So these two people might be the culprits of the previous theft. After more than a month, these two thieves finally could not bear it anymore. He did not expect that the thieves would choose his own building this time. These two people, could their target be his house? It was definitely not the fourth floor. The parrot general's house was special. Because of a rare parrot, the balcony had an iron fence and the door had been changed. It was very well protected and difficult to steal. And the other house on the fourth floor was empty all year round, so it probably did not have anything valuable. This time, who would the target of the two rats be? If it was his house, Jing Tan narrowed his eyes and moved his palms. The sharp claws stretched out and then retracted. I can't talk, I can't boil water, and I have to hide in my bag when taking the bus. But can't I deal with you?